From the library of the New York Stock Exchange, at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution for global growth for more than 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now, at the NYSE and at ICE's 12 exchanges and 7 clearinghouses around the world. Now here's your host, Josh King, Head of Communications at Intercontinental Exchange.
Hi, everyone. How do you get your business news? Is it the paper edition of the Wall Street Journal delivered to your driveway? Are you glued to CNBC or Fox Business News? Do you have a Twitter feed with all the leading financial journalists scrolling through your phone? In many cases, it depends upon your demographic. Today, we sit down with the founder and CEO of Cheddar, Inc., which is what Jon Steinberg calls his live post-cable network focused on covering the innovative products, technologies, and services transforming the world around us. Last year, Cheddar announced a third round of financing from many well-known names: AT&T, Altice USA, Lorne Michaels, Broadway Video, and I should note, for full disclosure, the New York Stock Exchange, a subsidiary of ICE. When you visit the floor of the NYSE on any day, you can see the broadcast studio at Post 10, where Cheddar has been turning out content since its launch in April 2016. Back in those early days, the show was supposed to be an hour long, but today's guest, who anchored that first broadcast, says they ran out of content after 40 minutes. But since then, coverage has grown to include a full day of live reporting to millions of paying customers on a variety of social and OTT media services. Our conversation with Cheddar's founder and CEO, Jon Steinberg, right after this.
Inside the Ice House is presented this week by the Secure Financial Transaction Infrastructure, or the Safety Network. Safety is the backbone of the ICE platform, providing high-security, high-speed direct market access and trade execution capabilities to over 150 global markets. Safety connects data and analytics from more than 600 proprietary and third-party market sources. More on safety later in the show.
Jon Steinberg founded Cheddar in early 2016 and was up and distributing programming in just 4 months. Let's say he had some experience in the field. Before launching his new venture, he was the president and COO of BuzzFeed, the online upstart, where he was that company's 15th employee and helped to grow it into a billion-dollar internet giant. So he's no stranger to helping disrupt an industry and building a media juggernaut. Jon, welcome to the Ice House.
Thank you for having me here.
You like the new Peloton treadmill?
I love it. I think it's amazing. John Foley's an incredible entrepreneur. The Peloton bike has been a huge success with the screen and the interactive classes. And the
Who's your favorite trainer on the bike?
I like Jess King. I was talking to Foley about it, and he was saying some of the trainers, some of the instructors are more about spirituality, some are more about intense fitness. I think she's sort of a mix. And then I do the trending classes. It's a great company. Look, it's $1 billion company now. The last round, Goldman Sachs invested in. It's one of the so-called unicorns. Incredible.
Did you do any of the special Pyeongchang workouts?
No, I have not seen those yet. I really only do Peloton probably 2 days a week, and then most of the time I just do lifting. So I'm not as addicted to it as some people are.
Do you think your news anchors could deliver the news and do a 45-minute sweat burner at the same time?
Well, when I did this interview with John Foley, the CEO, we talked about possibly doing the interview while on the Peloton bikes. But that idea got spiked. I don't know why that idea didn't happen.
We should have just a little carve-out window of the Cheddar, at least the Cheddar news feed, so people can read while they do their watch.
I've talked to him about doing that, actually. We've had conversations about trying to get Cheddar on the bikes. I'm looking at all these places now. There's a network that controls all of the TVs in 80 airports, 2,000 screens. It's like a closed-circuit TV network almost. And by the time this podcast comes out, we should be live on that. So I'm excited about that. I like those kind of unique locations to put the programming.
Why do you have Albert Einstein on the top of your Twitter feed?
It's a great question. I saw that painting. I was with the kids, and we were at this. We did like a food tasting tour, believe it or not, in Florida. and there was that beautiful streetscape of like a rainbow color field, and then Einstein in the background there. And look, I guess I admire people that come up with ideas that are largely doubted at the time, and then people who persevere. I mean, that really is the entrepreneurial journey. Everybody kind of thinking that it's impossible, and then you even at times thinking that it's impossible, and then one foot in front of the other, making it happen. So that's why, people like John Foley, who said, I'm going to do spin classes in people's homes, and I'm going to ship a bunch of bikes to everybody's houses and connect them all with the internet and live broadcast instructors. Elon Musk, I'm going to land rockets on their tails. The incredible is incredible to me. I mean, that's a lot of Cheddar too, right? That's why that we cover that stuff on Cheddar, because that's the stuff that I like. I found it inspiring, and our bet was that a broad group of people in their 20s and 30s wanted talking speakers and self-driving cars all day long.
And we're going to get to some of that.
Yeah.
I think if you remember what I said in the intro, you started back in April 2016. I don't think that your set was quite what it was back then on the New York Stock Exchange compared to what it is now. What's your memories of those first few days in the air?
I have great memories of it. I mean, I remember the first day that we did it, like yesterday. I mean, Ian, who's sitting right over here with us, was there with me. We were building this thing and getting it all set up, and it's all like, I have a lot of like positive nostalgia for it. I mean, Peter and I were down there. We only had 2 other employees at the company at the time, and
this is Peter Goldenstein.
Peter Gorenstein, yeah, who's our chief content officer. And then the idea was, well, let's do it one foot in front of the other, is what I always said. Let's see if we can do an hour. Let's see if we can find enough guests. And then let's never go backwards. So we made the commitment to ourselves and to all of our partners that if we did an hour that first day, I think it was April 11th, 2016, April 12th, we wouldn't do less than an hour. And then we got to 3 hours and 4 hours, and then we hired people. And that the key to these whole things is one foot in front of the other.
You mentioned Elon Musk earlier. He brought his Falcon Heavy rocket to launch pad 39A at Cape Canaveral to send it into space, the very same spot that 40 years earlier the Apollo Saturn rockets went into space. For your forward-looking, cutting-edge media business, you've come to a place that is over 225 years old. Why did you pick the floor of the New York Stock Exchange?
And it was so important to me. And if we weren't to have been welcomed here, I don't know if we could have made the company. I really think that Tom Farley and the rest of the team here seeing the vision and saying we're going to do this, it was such an integral part of it, because to me it's a visual medium. I always say that Cheddar is a window on the world medium. And so if we're going to do business news coverage, it has to be at the heart of what is visually identified as business. And we love the market because the market makes live work. In the absence of open to close, business is a bit disconnected. So if we couldn't have the floor of the exchange, it wasn't clear to me that we could do a live business network. And so when you look at visually, it's stunning. The people that come through are stunning in terms of the executives. And then you can visually see and feel the market on up days, down days, IPOs, even the cycle of the year, as you go into holiday periods where that there's going to be, you come back from Christmas holiday and New Year's, and you come to the floor in January, and everybody sort of kind of holds their breath to see what will the first week of January look like. You can't do it without the trading floor.
I don't know if you were at BuzzFeed or the Mail Online when you were writing the business plan for Cheddar, but what was that spark of a moment where you said to whoever you were, whether you're writing it yourself or to your partners, say, it's got to be the floor of the exchange?
I came to the floor for the first time. It would have been, I guess, 2011 maybe, when I did Squawk on the Street, which became Squawk Alley. And I had never seen anything like it. And the last time I had been to the exchange had been probably in middle school, when we used to do the tours in the gallery, right? And so I had these kind of very visual memories of it. And when I looked around and I saw the different media outlets on the floor, and the vision for what Cheddar was going to be kind of came to me, I would say it was always in my head. I have sketches of kind of like where it would look like on the floor. So I never had really a vision of it that didn't involve the exchange.
What are the metrics you're using now to tell folks about how broad your viewership is these days?
We have all the view data. So, we're able to say that we do, 200 to 300 million views a month at this point across all of the clips that are on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. And then we use an audience measurement firm called Cogent that calls up 4,000 people every 6 weeks to ask them, are they watching us live? Are they aware of us? And so on and so forth. And, that nets out to about 6 million people that watch the content across one of the platforms live in some form. And then now I've begun to work with Nielsen to try to push them to come up with methodology for measuring us across all of these different OTT platforms. So, we kind of try to use every possible metric that we can to kind of explain the scale to largely advertisers.
For all those views, what's been the ramp of headcount that you've needed to have to pull this off?
We're at 120 people now, which is pretty good. That's 8 hours live for Cheddar, and then Cheddar Big News is the kind of the headline news network. I call it sort of an apolitical CNN is sort of the vision for that, or a headline news or a USA Today type thing. And that headcount to do that is sort of baked into that. We're going to launch that network with 10 people, 10 additional heads. Obviously, there's a lot of heads that from the core operation that kind of parlay over to that. But what I always tell our team is, if we can do this with 100 or 200 people, it's extraordinary. If we do this with 1,500 people, then it just becomes a lot less exciting. It's funny. I always remember the line from whoever played Sean Parker in the Facebook movie, and he says, it's not, $1 million is not cool. It's cool, $1 billion. And what I always say to our team is 1,000 people's not cool, 100 people's cool.
That's exactly right. You could have called your business anything. It didn't maybe make a lot of sense in 1994 when Jeff Bezos came out with the name Amazon for his company selling books, although in retrospect you understand exactly what he was doing. Why call this thing Cheddar?
Well, what I've realized recently, and for some reason I didn't really think about this much for the past 2 years, is fox. A fox is a furry woodland creature, right? And when I say Fox to you, you think of Fox Network, and you think of Fox Business and Fox News. So it is amazing that all these names sort of mean a random thing, and then over time become to be associated with something. Cheddar means money.
In whose vernacular?
And Jay-Z has a lyric, and people have called. It's like it's like a sort of a shorthand for it, or a fun term that people use. It's like a hip hop term as well. But I wanted a name which was very memorable, which was sort of adjacent or connoted business or money. And I wanted people either to love it or think it was stupid. And
it didn't seem to make much sense to Donald Trump when he tried to pronounce it at his first news conference as president-elect.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a great moment too. But I'm okay with people thinking it's silly or stupid. At least they remember it. Nobody forgets it, And also, I wanted what we do to not seem like we were trying to copy things people were already doing. So, using a letter acronym would have seemed like we were trying to be something we weren't. And then I thought that calling it something which was too sort of endemic, Money Network or Ticker or Stock News or something, I felt like that would just get lost in the shuffle. So, it's very much a branding and marketing exercise. It's probably turned out better than I thought it would have.
Is it a measure of Cheddar, quote, having arrived that a story ran today on CNBC.com about Snap planning 2 versions of its camera-enabled glasses that uses Cheddar as its news source?
Yeah, that's really important to us. The first step was being able to cover the news in a unique format. And then the second step of our editorial journey is being able to break and make news. And we hired a young reporter named Alex Heath. He joined us from Business Insider. And he was getting a lot of scoops. He was getting a lot of scoops on Snapchat. He was getting a lot of scoops on Facebook. And, what I consider a scoop is a unique nugget or information bit that doesn't require a long, drawn-out investigation process for 2 reasons. First of all, those long, drawn-out investigation processes are unbelievably costly, and as a small company, we're not equipped to do that. And then the second piece being that they are very legally fragile. They need to be thoroughly vetted, tons of lawyers involved, and that's the kind of thing that a CNN or a New York Times or a Washington Post can do, and a Cheddar can't do that. We don't have the equipment to do that, the people to do that. So Alex basically, gets stories and as people call him and people email him stuff and employees that trust him. And yes, it's really important to me now that we have stories that then everybody needs to source us because that creates credibility. It makes people want to come on our air because they know that we're a place that does original reporting. It bolsters advertisers' excitement around us, and it creates a whole flywheel around the company.
Google Glass was roundly panned when it debuted. Do you think Snap's version will avoid some of Google's mistakes?
Well, the reason why this is a good story is that the first version of the Snapchat Spectacles, they wrote off a lot of inventory on a quarter or two ago. And this second version, and I think most people thought they weren't going to try to do another set of spectacles. This new version has fixed a lot of the technical uploading issues associated with the first version. And then they've even announced, or they not announced, we even broke the story that there's going to be a third version even further out that's going to have 2 cameras that's going to allow you to do depth of field and augmented reality and things of that nature. So it's a very exciting story because spectacles are a very exciting product. And also, people didn't see it coming because no one thought Snapchat was going to stay in the hardware game. So we knew last night when we had the story and Alex decided he was going to break it on our air this morning, we knew that it would be big. And, there's this site we all like and the Facebook executives we know that read pretty obsessively called Tech Meme. It's sort of like a leaderboard of the biggest tech stories of the day. And this story is now on the top of it. So we love when that happens.
You think it'll get Kylie Jenner back in the fold?
The funny thing about that Kylie Jenner tweet, which, sent the stock down quite a bit, was she was still on Snapchat, right? So, it was a bit unfair that she, or a bit misinterpreted that tweet, but to your point, I mean, our earlier topic about why is it important to be on the floor, it's the Snap post is, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet from where we are, right? When Kylie Jenner does a tweet, the question is like, does it matter or does it not matter? There's only one indicator of whether or not people think it matters or not, and that's the stock price, right? And that day, the stock price, I think it traded down, 6% or something based on that tweet that she did, right? We're here where it traded down 6%, right? If we're in a green screen studio,
even Midtown somewhere.
Midtown, like you're not where it's trading down. And I think that people's perception around live and real and where the action is essential.
Cheddar did a story a few days ago about Dunkin' Donuts' new concept store. And lo and behold, if you watch the feed today, your anchors have 2 cups of frothy Dunkin' brew perched atop their desk. I remember Starbucks sponsored Morning Joe a couple of years ago. How does native advertising fit into your business model?
It is the sum total of our revenue right now. I mean, the $11 million in revenue we did last year was all overwhelmingly 90 some odd percent that native branded integration. And I think that it's not something that we invented. When I was at BuzzFeed, we did native advertising there that was largely articles, but we borrowed from David Ogilvy's great vision around advertorials to do that. With this, cable networks having what is termed the lower third of the screen sponsorship with what's called a bug, a logo there. All the major cable networks do that. We just decided to kind of turn the volume up to 12 in terms of doing that. And it's been unbelievably effective. We run brand studies on the efficacy of this. We've got partners like E-Trade and HP and Ally Bank and Dunkin'. And you're looking at 60, 70%, in some cases 80% lift in purchase intent and favorability in terms of as a result of those integrations.
I think the origin species of that would go back decades, probably to Camel cigarettes. Remember
Camel
John
Caravan.
Let's hear that.
Yeah.
The makers of Camel cigarettes bring the world's latest news events right into your own living room. Sit back, light up a Camel, and be an eyewitness to the happenings that made history in the last 24 hours. The Camel News Caravan presents Today's News Today. Produced for Camel Cigarettes by NBC.
First native advertising.
Absolutely. Look, I like it when we can point to what we're copying and then it's not new. There's a reason why they did that, because it works, and people, that show is successful for a good long time. And the notion of, okay, well, does advertising hurt? Does advertising make people not want to listen to the content? It's exactly the opposite, right? It's far less interruptive than a commercial. And no one has ever forgotten that the Camel Caravan Hour was on NBC.
And John Cameron Swayze would light up a butt on air just to reinforce that point.
Absolutely, and there's 100 different ways to do these integrations. It can be a thematic integration. With HP, their tagline is "Keep Reinventing." We do segments around reinvention, and then with a partner like Fidelity, we can use their application, integrate it into the show to look up stocks, to look up earnings, to look up ratios and technical trading points. So there's always a thematic way you can do it, and then often there's a product, physical or virtual. Physical in the case of Dunkin' Coffee or HP laptops, and virtual in the case of integrating the app into the show.
My household may be one of a dying breed where we pay the full boat to a cable company for every channel available. Is that part of the reason that Disney felt the reason to make their bid for Fox, or that Comcast stepped in earlier this week and put in a $31 billion bid for Sky TV?
I think that there's two trends. So the content consolidation trend, which is what you're talking about, which is Discovery merging with Scripps and announcing here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and then coming over and David Zaslav and Ken Lowe coming on our air to talk about it. The trend of Fox merging a bunch of their assets with Disney is really probably a response to the consolidation of media heft that Google, Facebook, and Netflix have. And Murdoch has spoken quite candidly about the idea of being subscale. So that really is a question of, in a world of, and even Apple too, in a world of digital giants, you've got to be so big to compete for advertising dollars and audience share. On the question about the full boat of the cable bundle, broadband is growing. Comcast is growing their broadband business. Altice is growing their broadband business. The wireless providers are competing in that as well too. And then video subscribers, people that are getting the full video package, are decreasing by mid-single digit percentages. So you're going from 80 to 90 million households that have video, a cable box, in the U.S. And there's a decline there. And then there's a growth on the other side, which is these skinny bundles, which is Sling, Philo, YouTube TV. There's 5 million of those households now, and that doubled in the past year. And there was a great report put out by Moffett-Nathanson, which I think is an excellent research house, that puts the number of 10 million households that will have these bundles by the end of the year. So it's a shifting behavior. For the cable companies, the broadband business is so lucrative. It's almost a bit like Apple selling fewer Mac computers, but over time kind of hitting upon their best product. You could argue the best product in the history of the world, right? Because it's the highest market cap company in the world, the iPhone.
Yeah.
And it's a transition.
You recently tweeted out a shot of the cover of Fast Company magazine with the quip, it's the only time I buy print.
Yeah.
It was the most innovative companies, I think the 50 most innovative companies. It had the Washington Post up on top, based on all the things that I think Jeff Bezos has brought to that business. It had companies like Gimlet Media in the podcast business, Crooked Media also in the podcast business, Axios, and also Cheddar on the list. What do all of these companies have in common?
All these companies have, the list is called most innovative, and the, innovation is really shorthand, I think, for doing something very different, right? So the Washington Post would be investing in technology and original reporting at a time where that's becoming increasingly costly and people are cutting back, right? Gimlet would be the trailblazer in the podcast space. And Axios would be a company that went from sort of 0 to 100 in terms of being the heartbeat of DC in terms of covering the White House and having an inside view into that.
And where does Cheddar fall in that? What did you bring home that said, we're so happy to be on that list?
Well, I think that we chose to do something very different at a time where, I can't think of any companies that are startups that are doing 8 hours live a day going to do 16 hours live a day. It's a bet, right? And, when we started it was a long odds bet. And then ideally each day those odds become a little bit less long. And then the problem with that is the odds become less long, more people enter and more competition comes in. I think the reason why we haven't had as much competition at this point is because the technical complexity of doing the live broadcast and then kind of combining that with a lot of the internet kind of publishing skills is sort of it's a unique skill set. It's not clear to me that we could do what we're doing here at Cheddar and then also run a big website with a lot of images and a lot of articles. It'd be like trying to do two very hard things at once. So I think that's why we've managed to kind of pick this very unique niche.
Whether it's the Washington Post or Cheddar, there are so many roots to traditional media and the kind of innovation that you're bringing to the market. I want to hear a clip from perhaps one of the original big media companies and its leader, because I think that has a particular connection to you. Let's hear it.
Tonight we're proud to present a Walt Disney classic, Robin Hood. This full-length animated film is not just for kids, but for the kid in all of us. It stars as foxy gentleman, Robin Hood, plus all your favorite characters. There's Little John and Maid Marian, and of course there's evil Prince John and that cold and heartless Sheriff Nottingham. The brilliant Disney animation, along with music and songs, brings a new dimension to this legendary classic. Tonight you'll see what really happened in Sherwood Forest.
That's Disney's former chairman and CEO Michael Eisner introducing Robin Hood, just like Walt himself did in the days of old. When you were 15 years old, Jon Steinberg, you had a summer internship at Disney, NYSE, ticker symbol DIS, which included presenting to Eisner. What did the teenage Steinberg learn from that experience, and what do you bring it to Cheddar today?
My whole life, from the age of, 7 or 8 on, I wanted to be a Disney Imagineer. Like that was, I had learned what Disney Imagineering was. I went to Disney World. I went to Epcot, and my mind was just blown. And then I read about Walt Disney, and all I wanted to do was be Walt Disney. So when I was able to weasel my way into getting an internship there and got to work in the R&D group, it was, it was a bit like the movie Big with Tom Hanks is what I always tell people. I was like a gopher, but I got to be around these incredibly brilliant people. What I learned from that might not be what you expect that I learned from that. I did that when I was, 15, 16, to the time I graduated college. I sort of had an internship with this team. And then I graduated college, and it was sort of over. And at that point, I went and did some jobs that were not so great. And my career felt a little dead-ended to me. So in some ways, it was, I felt a little bit like a child star, right? Where I felt like my best days were sort of behind me, and I was, the ripe old age of 22. So I've had a lot of ups and downs. BuzzFeed was very hard in the first 2 years, and Cheddar was very hard in the first few years. Cheddar's still very hard. So I think that what I learned from the Disney thing is that you have lots of ups and downs. The people that give you the love when you need the love are true friends and true supporters, because when you're on top, everybody loves you. So I think I learned a lot of humility or tough knocks, I guess, from the Disney experience, because it was so disappointing to have done something so fun and so creative, and then to have, such boring jobs when I was fresh out of college.
And even Eisner's own story, leaving Disney, was a tough knock on him, but he sort of roared back with Tornante now.
Yes, and I got to meet him years later and had an early dinner with him once. And yeah,
people have second acts.
People have second, third, and fourth, and fifth acts. My dad was, my dad grew up, pretty poor in Newark, New Jersey, and his parents insisted, being the first member of the family to go to college, that he be a doctor. And my dad was not a good student and didn't have any interest for medicine and was pushed into it. And was an okay doctor, but he wasn't blowing out the doors. And at 36 years old, he decided he wanted to go into real estate. And he moved us all from New Jersey to New York. And, today he's one of the most successful residential real estate brokers in New York City. So, it's constant reinvention. Things constantly change. And I do like that Churchill line. I always get it wrong. It's something like, to change is good and to change often is divine, or something like that. And, I kind of live by that.
More on Jon Steinberg's long and winding path through the Sherwood Forest of big media after this.
When the pressure is on to get that final order in before the close, you need to make sure that you have fast, secure access to the world's leading markets. Whether you need to trade or access data on ICE's futures exchanges, the NYSE, other third-party exchanges, or the leading cryptocurrency exchanges, ICE's Safety Network delivers premier content and direct market access to hundreds of global exchanges and trading desks around the world. Learn more about ICE's Safety Network at theice.com/SFTI.
Back now with Jon Steinberg, founder and CEO of Cheddar. I saw a recent photo, Jon. You were talking before the break about your experience at BuzzFeed. You took it at BuzzFeed's office on Spring Street, Lower Manhattan, and part of that headquarters is now boot storage for a shoe store.
Yeah.
You went from your teenage years with Walt Disney Imagineering to gigs with Google and BuzzFeed.
It's boot storage because BuzzFeed is in a much bigger office and outgrew that space. And actually, the boot store that was downstairs, even when we were there, I guess the boot store is doing so well. It's like an expensive boot company, like Fry Boots. I don't really know what the kind of boots they are, but I know it's called Fry. That they took the second floor for boot storage. So it's not like they turned it in. For me, it was just like.
But BuzzFeed has had challenges figuring out how to take its next step. I mean, you had the news division possibly talking to Lorraine Powell Jobs. I mean, and these are rumors, but it's trying to figure out how it grows from adolescence to adulthood.
I would say the reason why I went back there and took the picture is that I don't like looking backwards. I really don't like looking backwards, but I do like kind of reminiscing and trying to think about what I learned in the different places and remembering what it felt like to sit in that office in June of 2010 when I went to work there and how hard it was, and there was no business coming in, and people didn't think I was particularly experienced because I wasn't particularly experienced, and most people thought I would just get fired. And you kind of try to put yourself back into that mindset from time to time and remember what it was like and how you kind of solved your way or worked your way out of those problems. And then I think so when the next set of problems comes along, you can kind of reflect back on, oh, well, I got through this, and then I'll get through the next thing. So that's how I think you stay on the cutting edge. I think you stay on the cutting edge by remembering that there's always a different problem. There's always a different hassle. You got through the last one. You'll get through this one. That's really important, I think.
Moving on from BuzzFeed, it was next after the stop at Mail Online to Cheddar. You said in the past that there's too much emphasis on the idea and not enough on the grind. And Cheddar did follow that model. The company started, I think, in January 2016, and you were on the air by the middle of April.
Yes.
How did you make that happen so fast, and would you do it the same way again?
Well, we had a lot of support from the New York Stock Exchange. We really did. I mean, it was all here, and we just brought the equipment in, and the fiber and the infrastructure was here. So that was a heck of a jump start for us. And I don't think we wouldn't have been on the air as quickly were it not for that. But to answer the first part of your question, I just don't think ideas are worth nearly as much as people think. I have people come up to me all the time and say, I have an idea for this, I have an idea for that. And it is the expression my grandfather used to say to me, like, your idea and a subway token will get you on the subway, And as a little kid, I didn't know what that meant. It kind of confused me. Now I know what it meant. What it means is, the idea is worth nothing. You're going to get on the subway with the subway token, and your idea doesn't actually do anything for it. I really believe that if more people took their bad ideas and just worked really hard on them rather than waiting for the perfect idea, they would create value. Now, I can't tell you how much value Cheddar would have been worth. This is really kind of like the key to the whole thing. Let's say that we did 1 hour of Cheddar and people liked it, and for some reason we got to 3 hours, let's say, and the audience capped out and the demand capped out, and let's say we were doing 3 hours a day, we had 30 employees, we'd managed to get the business profitable, and we had 200,000 people a day watching it, right? Not millions, just 200. The company would not be worth what it is worth now, but assuming that we capitalized it correctly and we didn't get ourselves topsy-turvy, the business would be worth more than the capital that got put into it. So when people used to say to me, is the audience big enough for Cheddar? Will it be big enough? My answer was always, it'll be big enough as long as we don't overcapitalize it.
How's the company valued today?
So the last round, we were valued at 85 million post.
You were once, I think, when you started out, I don't think you described it this way, but others did, was the business news channels for millennials,
yes,
or the CNBC for millennials, the way they live their lives. And the stats back that up in 2016, but we're now seeing old farts like me sometimes tuning in.
Yeah.
With 85% of adults in 2017 now getting their news from their mobile devices. Have you seen a change in the demographics of your average viewer?
Yeah, certainly. But we have not yet hit the point where we are so big that the average age tends to creep up. But that's a good thing. You know, Michael Lewis wrote this book called The New Thing. It in recent years, like that book is less remembered than The Big Short and things like that, right?
I remember The New Thing.
Or Moneyball. Everybody likes the new thing. Everybody likes new media. And, you know, the fastest growing segment, to your point, of iPad users is senior citizens. And I've always felt that if you get the young people, you get the older people, because young people drive culture. And unless the culture and the content is so, I don't know, dramatic, 9 Inch Nails, right? Which is going to be very hard, let's say, for, or Nirvana. It's going to be very hard for people in their 50s and 60s to adapt. Not unlike it's very hard for me to like, Miley Cyrus and my kids like Miley Cyrus. In music, it can be. But in most cases, young people tell you about a great TV show. They tell you about a great movie, and it creeps upward. And I've witnessed that in all of my older friends. I've witnessed that in my grandparents and business mentors and leaders that I interact with in their 60s and 70s and 80s. I've been privileged to spend a bunch of time with Jack Welch through my relationship with Strayer. Jack's interested in everything. He's interested in all the stuff that young people started. Now, I know that going the other direction is very hard. Golf is not going to see a renaissance amongst 20-year-olds. It's very hard to go that direction.
I think you wrote in the Hollywood Reporter in 2016 that by 2017, everything in the TV ecosystem will be confused and up for grabs. I think we'll see single-digit percentage cord cutting hit double-digit percentage cord cutting.
Yeah.
How's the prophecy looking now?
I think it's looking pretty good. I think it is looking pretty good. And, I was reading an analyst report today on AMC. And, they said that when you talk about AMC, you're really talking about The Walking Dead, which is, their mega hit show. If your dramas and comedies, it's not clear to me that you need a cable network, right? You probably just need a way to deliver that content. Maybe it's Netflix, maybe it's Hulu, maybe it's something new that's direct to consumer. And then if you are live news or part of that live suite, you've got a very lucrative existing audience, and you need a way to get to a younger audience. And I think that's what the consuming public is going to want. YouTube TV advertised heavily during the World Series, and then they advertised during the Super Bowl. And I didn't think we'd be at 5 million subs for skinny bundles by this point, with 800,000 added in the last quarter. So I think it's looking pretty good. Maybe we'll be back here. We'll do the Ice House again, in a year, and maybe I'll be off. Maybe cord cutting will be 9% or 8%, not 10%. We'll see.
You have been on the record many times, Jon Steinberg, most recently, I think, at the 2017 IAB conference, saying that traditional advertising is broken. I'm watching your feed today. I'm seeing 2 ads. One is for those strap-on chains that go on your feet to walk in snow, and it's this beautiful 1 minute long
Those are actually
montage.
they're actually not commercials, but go on.
So we'll describe what that is, because what I was thinking watching that was, I got to get myself a pair of those.
Yeah.
I'm headed up to the Catskills tonight, and there's a foot of snow there.
Right. Well, they're all part of the content that we found people really like on Facebook and Instagram is these like gadget type videos, these kind of surprising and amazing gadgets. The one that we did that was the biggest was, and they're not all things that you can buy. People think they're commercials, but like the most popular one we've ever done was a clothing folding machine. You dumped your clothing into this robot, and the robot folded the clothes for you. That did 90 million views. I think it's 100 million views now.
But doesn't someone want to capitalize on that and sell
you can't,
those?
But it's not even really available on the market yet. It's like sci-fi type stuff. So those do very well. We had one this week, which is like this kind of it's almost like a baster that you can inject into a steak. Ian, this will be good for you for the event on Sunday. And a bunch of people actually, a bunch of cooks that are friends of mine, they wanted to get it. We put the affiliate links in. It's like you can put your rub or your marinade into this like injector, and then you can either put it into like a rib roast or into a chicken or something like that. We make some affiliate revenue off of those. I mean, it's not what's keeping the lights on. We mostly do it because when we go to certain platforms require commercials, okay? Sling and YouTube TV and Philo, the skinny bundles we're on require commercials. Facebook, we are not able to insert commercials. Twitter, we're not able to insert commercials. you know when you're watching TV on the internet sometimes and it says, we are in a commercial, we'll be right back. Have you ever seen that, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like a slate. When we found out about how that worked, we were like, why do they put that in? Let's just put fun gadget videos and fun things we call interstitials into that space.
And do you produce these interstitials, or you get them from elsewhere?
We find all sorts of people all over the internet. We contact them, and then these people are very happy. Some of these are Kickstarter people. Some of these are inventors who have made little videos.
You're applying a graphical consistency to them.
Yeah, we cut them. We tell the story. We actually now have moved into actually producing our own versions of these. One that we did that was very successful was mop slippers, which is exactly what it sounds like. And we went and got the mop slippers, and we spilled things on our floor. And Eitan, who's a guy who works for us, mopped up stuff in the mop slippers. This stuff really sounds ridiculous until you think about the fact that...
I was watching it. I was glued to it.
The New York Times has a wedding section, a fine dining section, an architecture section. Cheddar has a weird and wild, wacky gadget section. It's our funnies.
Well, I miss the old NYT circuits section because I used to devour
I love
that. And that's
that.
exactly
Tuesday.
like that.
Well, Tuesday was
Thursdays.
Science Time. Tuesday was Science Times.
Thursdays
and
was circuits.
Yeah, it was circuits. The good old... I miss Computer Shopper.
As we wrap up, Jon Steinberg, Cheddar has had an incredible 2 years so far. You started a new show with Fusion TV called The Point that you are hosting. Some episodes are shot right here at the New York Stock Exchange. Let's play a brief clip.
Do you think Plated has played an important role in getting men to cook and carry the labor a little bit more in the home life?
I definitely do. I think Plated enables anyone to cook a great meal at home from scratch. And I think oftentimes perhaps men don't do that just because they're not comfortable doing it. But with Plated, it makes it easy. And in my home, my husband cooks Plated for me.
He's cooking a plated meal that you designed.
Yes.
So are you backseat driver cooking, or how does that work?
I try my best not to be a backseat cook. Our apartment's very open, so I usually sit on the couch with a glass of wine, probably, and he's chopping the bell pepper, and I see that the slices are too thick, so I'll tell him to cut them all in half again.
That was you with Elena Karp, the co-founder of Plated. I wonder if you are a Plated customer now.
We actually really do like Plated. We use it a lot. We used it before. That's part of how we booked it.
So what are your plans for The Point with Fusion and future content development for Cheddar?
They've been a tremendous partner, and we classify that type of content as what we call the on-demand version of our content. And we have a partnership with Spotify now. As the press has speculated, Spotify may or may not be direct listing their company soon. We're one of 8 partners in what's called Spotify Spotlight, and we produce a weekly news show that goes on to Spotify. So we like this. For us, this whole multi-platform approach is some people want a show, some people want a playlist as news, like on Spotify, and we sort of bob and weave and put the content in the format that people want it.
Your favorite meal on Plated?
I like veal meatballs quite a bit, actually. I had that this week. The kids can even cook these plated meals. They're so easy. They're like very visual the way you get the recipe.
You're making me hungry. It's Friday night, time to go home and get dinner.
Yeah.
Jon Steinberg, thanks so much for joining us.
Always great being here, guys. Thank you for the time.
That's our conversation for this week. Our guest was Jon Steinberg, founder and CEO of Cheddar, Inc. Cheddar broadcasting each and every weekday from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. If you liked what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so that other folks know where to find us. It's the easiest thing you can do to help support the show, help attract more listeners to it. If you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, email us at icehouse@theice.com or tweet at us at NYSE. Our show is produced by Pete Ash and Ian Wolfe, with production assistance from Ken Abel. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the library at the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of this information, and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security or recommendation of any security or trading practice.